Thank you. It's great to be here. So Stefan already said what I'm going to talk about. In the last few years, I've been calling myself mostly a wildlife photographer and an experience designer, which is pretty much a new term for an expensive travel agent. And I've been spending a lot of time in the bush, in the wilderness, over the last 5 or 6 years. But let's go back in time a little bit. I used to be in the industry, sharing the industry with this guy there on the left. In case you do not recognize him, I'll help you out. But then something happened to me. I had a defining moment, as Carolina had this morning. Not quite as sad, but I screwed up a relationship badly. And it ended up, basically, and it took me really 3 years to recover. And in those 3 years, I spent a lot of time thinking about, you know, what do I want to do, what makes me happy, and what's important to me. And I realized that just because I'm good at something, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm happy with it. So while I had this breakup, and while Bill went on to make more money, I followed my heart, and I sold my companies. Now, I wanted to do, basically, I sold it to a company in the US, and I wanted to build a boat and take it around on the West Coast there and explore a little bit for a few years. But unfortunately, part of my purchase price was paid in stock, and I had a holding period. And you kind of think, well, you know what's happening now. My stock went down quite a bit, and my boat was getting shorter about a foot every day. So by the time it was, small, I came up with a different plan because that one didn't work, and I started the project Starship Millennium Voyage. And I, called on a couple of my friends and had Stern Magazine as the main media partner. And that was basically a 3-year multimedia cruise around the world on a 75-foot ship. And we did have a blog. Nobody called it a blog in those days, but it was a true blog. We were posting every day via satellite pictures and text at $12 US per minute for a 64 kilobit line. Now, you can imagine how much that cost. It was an incredible trip. We pretty much tried to cover the whole world there, and it was a really cool ship. We built it purposely for this. It even had a little flying dinghy, and yeah, it looked silly, and it actually was. But anyway, we were cruising down the west coast of North America, and all was good because we had the shoreline in sight and lots of talk on the radio, and the cell phone was still working. But as we were coming into Mexican waters, everything was quieting down. Nobody on the radio anymore, and there's no other boat. So that was the first time where, in the comfort or in the context of wilderness, I had a moment where I felt I was out of my comfort zone. Now, you got to remember, my only other ship that I had before was about 7 meters long, and I took it on the Elbe River. So this was a different story. We were heading west towards the Pacific and into an island about 200 kilometers away, and the water was getting deep and deeper. It wasn't 200 meters at the beginning, then 300, then 500, 1,000, 2,000 meters. And I really felt, again, it felt very much out of my comfort zone. Stupid, because if you sink, it doesn't matter whether you sink in 20 meters or in 2,000 meters. But it really felt uncomfortable. And I really remember those days, and I had a good laugh when I think about it. So this trip went on, and we, obviously are getting more and more sea legs, went to some amazing places all over the place, all over the world. And what was important here to notice was that my comfort zone expanded. And, later on we went 4,000 meters, 5,000 meters, 6,000 meters of waters. I couldn't care less. It was something that I got used to it. So after 3 years, I was back in Hamburg, and I was starting to think, what am I going to do next now? It was interesting because my girlfriend at the time, she left after 2.5 years. Now remember, this is a very intense situation on a boat. 2.5 years probably compares to about 20 years of marriage. But so I had no relationship, no girlfriend. I had no job. I sold my ship to Gene Hackman, the actor, and I had no home. So, no apartment, no bicycle, no car. I was very free, you know, no commitments anywhere. And in a way, that was very cool for the first couple of weeks or months or so, but then I realized, again, I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone. I needed something to lean on. I finally was on a trip to Madagascar, and I stopped in Cape Town, and I ran into this guy, and he had about 50 lodges in southern Africa, and I decided, listen, I want to live here now, I think. So I packed my 7 bags from Hamburg, and I had my container from the US come over, and I bought a house there, and I started to settle down, and I really wanted to go back into nature. And I'm running into this guy. He opened up his camps for me. So for the years to come, I was spending good times. As you can see, it was, you know, getting dark and a drink in my hand, in the wilderness of southern Africa. And I started to play with my camera. And I wanted to take a few pictures, but there was no intention at that time. It was just playing around a little bit, trying to get some pictures that have maybe different angles or different perspectives. And I really, really enjoyed that, being in the wilderness, and gave me a lot of really good feeling and a lot of clarity in my life as well. But then one day I looked at my bank account, and that wasn't very encouraging. And I figured, well, maybe time is over for goofing around. So I looked for an idea to sustain my lifestyle, and I thought maybe I should become a photographer. And that's what I did, and I luckily found a publisher really fast, and this book really was quite successful from the very beginning, and was sold in over 70 countries, and I'll just briefly show you a few more pictures of those days in that book before I move on. But what I realized then is that, no, that was a bit too quick now, that comfort zones are very relative and individual. For some people, canoeing and then running into an elephant, or running into an elephant on foot is out of their comfort zone, or traveling by a Land Rover across Africa and crossing rivers, or, you know, basically sleeping overnight somewhere in the wilderness, or waking up in the middle of the Kalahari Desert with nothing around you. Some people might already find a hot air balloon ride, you know, bit out of the comfort zone, or an encounter with other cultures. So I realized that everyone's comfort zone is different. And a very good example of that is what I call the Himba Manhattan exchange. Now take that lady here, for example, and put her into Manhattan. Not only is she going to be out of her comfort zone, but she's probably not going to survive much and long, because she's going to get run over by a car which she has never seen before. But it works the same way the other way around. So take that guy from New York and put him into this area, which is somewhere in the northern part of Namibia. He's also probably not survived a long time. So I was going on with my work as a photographer and shooting a little bit in the Arctic. And what I really wanted to do is shoot some walruses. When I say shoot, I mean taking pictures, just to clarify that. And the only place there were walruses was up there in the very far northern part of Canada. And there's nothing around there. So I want you to meet Joe. Joe here is an Inuit. They used to be called Eskimos, but the politically correct thing now is to call them Inuit. And Joe was the only guy for 1,500 kilometers around that had a boat. And it was difficult to communicate with him on email and on phone, but I ended up going there hoping that, you know, everything would work out. Well, this was his boat. Looked all right still, you know, other than the fact that the life raft already, you know, expired. But then I got into my cabin, which was a little bit more of a challenge. And the galley also didn't look very encouraging. But the walk into the engine room really did it for me. Now, I was clearly out of my, you know, comfort zone, because there was no Coast Guard for about 1,500 kilometers. And we were out at sea for about 7 hours, and then, you know, the wind picked up. And this guy starting to feel uncomfortable. Well, we managed to just squeeze into a bay, and I put up my satellite dish and my laptop, and I looked at you know, weather maps, and there was surely enough a huge summer storm coming. So now it wasn't just getting out of the comfort zone, it was putting myself into danger, and that's not what I wanted to do. So we obviously had to change plans from a 4-day trip to a 1-day trip. We took a few photographs of the walruses, and we headed back. Leaving the comfort zone does not mean that you have to put yourself in danger. And I want to clarify that I'm no hero. Clearly not. I want to live. And that's really what you know, I want to take people and I want to go to interesting places, but I'm no Felix Baumgartner. So I want to talk a little bit about calculating risks or calculated risks. And I brought a little video for you. It's in German, but I'm sure most of you will understand. Somebody sent it to me a few days ago. I don't know where it comes from. I'm sorry, so I'm going to ask for forgiveness rather than for permission. But have a look at it.
Willst du noch eine Rede halten?
Hallo. Alles da. Das kann ich mir gleich geben, ich ziehe mich da gleich sofort raus.
Warte, ich filme das Wasser, warte. Eis hier überall. Ja, da.
Ist egal, überall rein.
In der Mitte am besten da.
Ja. Ich will nicht mal gucken, nicht dass das zu hart ist.
Nicht drauf?
Ja.
Motherfucker, fuck the fucking world and my new band is called Siskill. Oh, mein Arsch. Oh, guck mal, es geht gar nicht runter. Perfekt, oder? Aua. Hey, Alter!
Okay, I think you get the split here. So, you know, if he wanted to get out of his comfort zone, he could have measured the ice, you know, just to make sure. So, I want to tell you something about a calculated risk, which feels very dangerous, but actually it wasn't. This is the Danakil Depression it's in the northeastern part of Ethiopia. It's an incredible country. It's about 150 meters under the sea level, and it's unbelievable landscapes, like you feel like you're from a different planet. And it's also still very much, you know, growing by active volcanoes and so on and so forth. And there's this place here, it's called Erta Ale, and it's a lava lake, actually. Why lake? Because it's been like this for hundreds of years, and it's bubbling, and it's kind of nice, so just, you know, it's not very harmful. And so we landed there. You can probably see there's the helicopters there on the right, and as it was getting dark, you know, it was starting to glow more and more, and beautiful sky, and all this lava was, you know, bubbling and having a good time there, and you know, it felt extremely dangerous, and I was certainly, when the first time I went there, I was certainly out of my comfort zone, but it wasn't really dangerous, because as you might know, volcanoes erupt if there's too much pressure, and you know, it builds up over time and then it suddenly booms. Now this one was open. There's no boom there. You know, it was a lake pretty much. So it was really, really cool to be there, and we slept under the stars, and we put a few rocks there to protect us from the hot winds. And those mattresses, by the way, were the nicest mattresses I've ever had. They came by camel from Addis Ababa. But anyway, so let's talk about comfort zone, leaving the comfort zone. It's really when you cross the border into unknown territory. And it can be physical or emotional, I believe. It's always a sparkle of danger, a perceived danger at least, which is, you know, very relative, as we have now learned as well. There's always a little bit of comfort or discomfort and helplessness involved with it. And you're basically not really completely controlling the situation. And that is really, you know, I think it's quite an amazing experience if you have that, especially in the wilderness. But we can't do it too long, and you can't take it too far out. And it obviously should never be dangerous. But when you get back into, out of the comfort zone, back into the comfort zone, you really feel much better. You feel much stronger. You feel much more grounded. You have a really good, confident clearing up in your head, and you really kind of have a better sense of where you want to go. So over the last few years, I've been taking quite a few people into really remote places on this planet. This one here is called Aruba Rock. It's in northern Kenya. It's in an area where there's no humans. And when I say that, I mean it's a 360 experience. There is nothing what you can find, no cell phone range, no cell tower, no roads, no buildings, no people, really. And just to be there and to experience that and to land in those areas and to spend some time there, you know, even the biggest and the strongest men that I've taken, they start crying. It's just something that gets so emotional for them that you know, if you have a little bit of sense for that beauty that nature can produce, and hopefully you agree with me, this is unbelievable beauty, and this is a place maybe 15 kilometers further up north. It's called the Nabayotum crater, and it's on the southern coast of Lake Turkana. And you know, again, we land there. We land on top of the crater, and you feel like you're part of evolution. You're part of how the world had all started, and you become very, very humble, very, very small. And then there's the Painted Valley, which is again only maybe 25 kilometers away. And you know for sure these are these hoodoos. They're out of clay, and you know for sure there's no people there. You know for sure there's no people there because these clay hoodoos, as you can see there, some of them are quite big up there and rather small down there. You can easily push them over with a finger. And I'm sure if people would there, they would have already pushed all of them over. But it's untouched, and there's nothing you can see that reminds you of people. So luckily, you know, we come with a helicopter, and some people say, why with a helicopter? But I think we actually do less damage, and we compensate all the, all the fuel anyway with my climate. But we do actually less damage than trying to get there by car because there's basically no roads. And if we have footsteps, the helicopter is gonna take care of that when we take off again. So just to get a little bit of perspective here, this is what one of these nature's creation can do. And you're there in awe, and everybody that's been there is just deeply, deeply impressed. And what happens, they have this kind of pin code syndrome afterwards. And what happens, I call them about 2 or 3 weeks later, or we speak on the phone, and they tell me, you know what happened? I was walking up to that cash machine, I was trying to get some money, and shit, couldn't remember my pin code. And you know what, that didn't only happen once, that happened so many times. And I don't know, never told me anybody that they forgot the password, but pin codes, they couldn't remember. Some of that had a little bit stronger reactions, they changed their job, or the wife, or a few other things. And one guy actually put a huge amount of money into a charity, which I was really, really happy about. So guys, I guess my message is find out where your comfort zone is and get ready to cross that border. And you certainly can jump much higher afterwards. Thank you very much.